My focus was never to be the first legally blind Division I athlete. Like, that wasn't my goal. My goal was, I want to be the best football player I possibly can be. I want to be the best long snapper. I want to compete at the highest possible level. It just so happens that I'm legally blind. When I accepted being legally blind, it allowed me to realize, hey, I can choose to either allow it to control my life or I can control it, because I don't think our challenges define us. We can define them. They're always a part of us, but we can define who we want to be.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
Of Limitless Minds Podcast, we have Aaron Golub, who is a professional speaker, entrepreneur, and consultant who specializes in helping to shatter perceived limitations. He made history as the first legally blind Division I athlete to play in a game in college football, serving as the team's captain at Tulane University before moving on to an opportunity with the NFL as a free agent. After his story captured the national spotlight on Good Morning America, Aaron realized his journey wasn't just about football. It was about resilience and a blueprint for perseverance. Since the age of 17, he has traveled the globe delivering high-impact strategies that challenge teams to rethink the impossible and take immediate action. Check it out. All right. Welcome back to the Limitless Minds Podcast. Today, we got somebody I'm really excited to chat with and bring to our listeners. You know, I've been tracking this dude for a while. He's got an amazing story. And I think even more exciting, how he's leveraged that to impact just millions of people. Right. And so they're really excited. Aaron, I'm just going to kick this off and get right into some of the heart of it. Right. So over 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, you took the field down at Tulane as an NCAA football player. And carrying like limitations in your back pocket, right? Tell us about that. Tell our audience about that. Take them into that day when you took the field.
Yeah. So, I got to Tulane in obviously the summer of 2014. And like you said, I played for the first time in October of 2015 against UCF. And, look, I had been getting a lot more reps in practice that year and the weeks and months leading up to it. So I kind of figured that, hey, sooner or later, if there was ever a game that we were up big, I would probably get like my first shot, my first crack. My coach wasn't going to throw me in the first time when it's, 14-14 and it's a game-winning field goal or something.
Yeah.
But, look, it was an incredible experience. My focus was never to be the first legally blind Division I athlete. Like, that wasn't my goal. My goal was, I want to be the best football player I possibly can be. I want to be the best long snapper. I want to compete at the highest possible level. It just so happens that I'm legally blind. And my coaches saw that. I think that was a big reason why I was successful. In the weight room, on the field, everything that I was doing was trying to push myself and push others. I was that guy who would always, try and lift with the linemen and run with the receivers. And trust me, I could lift with the linemen. I definitely could not run with the receivers, but I would do whatever I could to try it. And I think that that's what allowed me that shot and that opportunity. But it was an incredible feeling. And I'm so grateful that I had that chance and for my coaches to give me that chance.
It's really cool. How many games was it? Were you into the season?
That year, how many?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, was it like right at the beginning? Was it of the season?
Well,
no,
I think it was October.
I think it was in October.
So it was probably like our fifth or sixth game, I would guess. Because it was October. Like I don't know. I'm going to guess like 15th or so. It was 8th, 15th, something like that.
Yeah. So you're you had already done all the practices. And then how did you feel when they called your name?
I was excited. The thing with being a long snapper is you can't feel emotions. You need to learn how to block them out, the same as a kicker. And so I couldn't be nervous. I couldn't be, excited. Of course I was for that split second, but you have to calm yourself down. Because if you're too excited, if you're too nervous, you're going to throw the ball way over the holder opponent's head or you're going to roll it back to them. And you just need to center yourself and do what you've done thousands of times in practice. And so I couldn't allow myself to feel emotions. And that's something that's obviously hard to do. Not many people are able to just block out those feelings, but you need to focus on doing that if you're a kicker or long snapper, because if you don't, then you're going to screw up.
Right.
I mean, listen, as I played football, Aaron, in college as well. Played at University of Richmond, played football and baseball there. And my best friend, my roommate, who was a wide receiver, but when he wasn't on the field, and if he's listening to this, I could dog him out right now. So he wasn't on the field much. Sorry, Jeff Rich. But he was a long snapper. And, what's interesting about him, Aaron, is that he was hearing impaired. Now, obviously quite different than being sight impaired, but he was hearing impaired. And But there's whistles, man, right? And there's calls being played, calls being made, and so on and so forth. So they had to set up a strategy where somebody would tap them, let them know if kicker's ready. But I just remember talking to him about being a long snapper because none of the rest of the play can happen if that snap's not on point, right? I mean, like you are the beginning of that battery. Like snaps off, then the holder's got to rescue it. If the holder can't rescue it, kicker can't kick it. So it starts with you, So like that pressure is real. But you're right. Like, and that's not the only position in sports, whether it be golf or tennis or it really almost most positions, most sports require that neutral, kind of mindset of not getting too high, not getting too low, kind of being flatline in some way, shape or form. But we all know football is like built around him. People, they kind of build this, around emotion, right? Getting, hype and emotion and that pregame speech and pregame talk and everything like that. But I think that, one thing I would love to hear from you too is how do you get to that centered state, in a moment like that when there's, you have, I don't know how many people are in the Tulane stadium or whatever stadium you might have been in, but 60,000.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was like, I don't know how many we fit, honestly, 30, 40,000, something like that. But it starts with your breathing and how you control that. Obviously, if you can't control your breathing, you can't control yourself, your heart, your mind is going to race. And so trying to send yourself in that way. But it comes down to trust and trust in yourself. This is something that you've done, who even knows, 20,000 times before that in practice and games in high school and all those scenarios. And you need to trust that you know what you're doing and you're going to grab the ball and you're going to throw it back and it's going to hit the holder where it needs to hit the holder. And trust your teammates to help make sure that you are set up properly. We obviously did a little different setup, similar to, your buddy, where the holder would run out on the field with me, make sure I got to the football at the ref, then he'd go back. Then the lineman would, double check. Okay, yes, Aaron's feet are straight. He's not going to throw it back, 17 yards in the other direction. And then we would go off auditory sounds. I couldn't see the hand flash. And so we'd do different verbal signals and I would have different counts in my head, things like that we had to practice. But it was centering myself through my breath and then through just trusting that I could do it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Aaron, just to clarify for the audience, I bet there's people wondering, so wait a second, you're blind? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, can you, set that up. Like, what does that mean? I mean, can you see nothing? Are you blind?
So my right eye is nothing at all. My right eye is totally blind. My left eye, I see out of a tiny pinhole. And, my vision is about 2,400. So perfect vision is 20/20. Mine's about 2,400 out of that eye.
Wow.
So it's very limited, obviously. I can see you guys on screen here. I can't tell you what color your eyes are. I can't tell you if there's something written on your shirt.
You can tell we're really handsome, though, right? Like you can see that, or no? Is that?
Thankfully, I can't see you guys because I think that'd be a challenge looking at you here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, man. No,
face for radio, face for podcast.
That's it. So when did you? How old were you when you started playing football?
I was in 7th grade, so I don't know, 12 years old, something like that.
Yep. And was that the first sport that you had played?
No, I tried everything growing up, and I had an aversion to sports that being legally blind was just a dumb idea. Mm-hmm. I wanted to play baseball. I tried hockey. I tried lacrosse at one point. I tried all these things that balls are flying extremely fast just at you. And I was obviously terrible at all of them, but I just wanted to do them. And I always did independent type sports. I snowboarded and I still snowboard today. And so I did that, but never a really team sport consistently until football.
Okay. And you played varsity football then in high school then as well?
So my sophomore year of high school, I was a 3rd string JV athlete. And I was terrible. I was still trying to be a lineman, a center, a defensive tackle. I knew I couldn't be a wide receiver, obviously. But I also, at the time, I wasn't very big. I was still a skinny kid. Yes, I was lifting weights, but I wasn't massive. And I had to change positions and think differently about what I could play. I found long snapping. And then I also just had to kind of adopt the mindset of do the work that nobody else is willing to do, and you'll get the results nobody else is able to get. And just going after in the weight room and putting on size as well. But I was never going to be a 300-pound guy by any means. My heaviest at Tulane was 215. And so, I obviously got very strong, but I wasn't a 300 type guy. And so once I switched positions, yes, I was long snapper on varsity, junior, senior year of high school, but sophomore year of high school, if you're a 3rd string JV guy, your sophomore year of high school, most of the time you're not making it anymore.
It's not gonna, it's not gonna work out for you.
I mean, so here's the reality I'm curious about is like how often, or did anyone ever tell you, hey man, Aaron, this isn't realistic, dude. Like, go do something else.
Look, I think friends or like kids in high school obviously thought it was ridiculous and would try and make fun of me or that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if like coaches ever necessarily said that. Maybe they thought it, but they didn't necessarily say it. I think my coaches knew that I wanted to play in college. I don't think they, in the beginning, had any idea of like what I was looking to do. And so it's really funny. And my high school coach is awesome. He's a fantastic guy, gave me an opportunity, and he's great. I remember specifically, and he knew I was talking to some schools, but I don't think he really knew like who I was reaching out to and what I was doing. And so varsity games were Friday night, and then Saturday mornings, you were supposed to, go to the JV games, and support them and that type of stuff. And so one day on like Thursday, I went up to him and be like, hey coach, like I can't make the JV game this Saturday. I have to go to like a college visit. I'm meeting with coaches and going to actually like go to the game. And he was like, oh, awesome. Okay. No problem at all. Like, of course, if you have something like that, he's not going to care. Mm-hmm. He's like, just curious what school. And I was like, Penn State. He was like, I think he just like was stunned. Obviously I didn't go to Penn State. And to be completely honest, it was a really fun trip, but like they were focused on like the 5-star guys there. They said hi to me. We had a conversation, but like, I just wanted to go for the game.
Well, no doubt. Happy Valley, man. That's a great place to go.
You know what? I remember there was a young man at USC. What was his name? His name was Jake Olson. Jake Olson. Yep. Yeah. I remember Jake Olson, I think, was inspired by, like you being kind of the pioneer in this space and realizing that, that he too could take that.
I don't know Jake well. I've talked to him a couple times. I think I could be wrong on this. I think he's 2 years younger than me. I know he played overlapped. He might be a year. He might be 3 years. I think he's 2. But I remember after my sophomore season, I had played for the first time. At one point, it might have been his freshman year at Tulane. Maybe I was a junior, or at USC, and maybe I was a junior. We did like a radio show or a podcast or something that our coaches had set up, and we were getting to know each other. I was giving him some advice. Like, great guy. I definitely don't know him well, but I've had like 1 or 2 conversations with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, I remember that story. I think it was like a college game day, run, like Tom Rinaldi making people cry and stuff like he likes to do. You know what I mean? But like one of the things that I think is really important for our audience and things that we talk about just internally at our companies is, just kind of, it's gratitude, particularly in the face of adversity. And you've said that, you're actually grateful that you were born legally blind. And I'm curious, like what you meant by that. And also like clarifying, are you grateful for like the blindness itself, or grateful for what blindness taught you and kind of brought you through?
And it's a great question. And I always have to clarify a little bit. So yes, I am grateful for it. Now, if there was, if I could snap my fingers right now and have perfect vision, of course I would do it. I don't want to stay with my vision, but I also understand that that's not realistic. Am I grateful up until this point? Would I change anything if I could go back to birth and have full sight somehow? No, I wouldn't, because the lessons it taught me, the person it made me, is incredible. I genuinely don't think I would have played football at the level I did if I wasn't legally blind. I wouldn't run the business I run. I wouldn't have the relationships I have. I wouldn't be the person I am. Because of that, I'm so grateful. Now, that doesn't change the fact that if I could have full sight tomorrow, that I would do it. Of course I would.
Right.
But I'm very grateful for my life being legally blind, because it's taught me so many things.
Yeah. When you were younger, did you always have that same attitude, or were you like, why me?
Yeah, 100%.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Up until sophomore year of high school, that was my position. I was the legally blind kid. It defined what I could and couldn't do, what I thought about myself, what others thought about me. It was, hey, I can't drive. Why can't I drive? It was, hey, why when I look at the phone, does it look like I'm smelling my phone? I'm not smelling my phone.
Yeah.
But over time, I realized, and it's a concept that, most coaches in football teach you, is you can only control what you can control. You can't control what others do, but you can control that you don't have any penalties. You don't go off sides. You hold the ball high and tight, those types of things. And I couldn't control that I'm legally blind. I had to accept it. And when you can accept your challenges into your life, you can start to ask yourself the questions of how can I learn from this and how can I grow from this? That starts shifting your perspective from why is this happening to me to how is this happening for me? And then over time, you find gratitude. It doesn't happen overnight, but that's kind of that process.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Were there some people early on in your life, whether it's parents or a mentor, that helped you in this area in terms of how you looked at things?
I wouldn't say necessarily how I looked at things, but definitely people in my life that helped and supported in a lot of ways. And I always call it my parents, and for two reasons. The first one is I went to school every day, sophomore year on, at 5 a.m. to go practice long snapping. I don't drive. My parents would take me every day.
Yeah.
Usually my dad would take me, assuming he was available, but he would never come to me and be like, do you want to, go? He would go and catch my snaps. But if I went to him the night before and asked, as long as he was free, he would take me, because it wasn't his job to make me great, but he was there to support me if I wanted to make myself great. The second reason is, as a kid, most parents do everything for their kids if they're struggling. You're 4 years old, 5 years old, whatever age you learn to tie your shoes, I don't even know. They tie your shoes and get you out the door. My parents would sit back, they'd look at me, they'd cross their arms and they'd go, Aaron, go figure it out. And they'd wait, because they understood that being legally blind, I'd have so many challenges later on in life. And if they didn't build resilience in me at a really young age, I'd be screwed later on in life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, it's a great lesson, about taking accountability for your own path. Let you figure it out through trial and error. I think that's something we can all learn from as parents. So that's awesome. To see.
I mean, like, really what you're talking about, man, is like the perspective of being able to go from limitation, and this is not perceived limitation, this is a limitation, right? Like, and being really clear and honest about that. But like from limitation to adaptation to advantage, right? And I love, like, that's the type of adversity tolerance that, for those that might be listening, that like hire people for their sales team, or are hiring somebody in a role, or looking for talent in any given area, sports, business, et cetera. Like that's kind of that's the good stuff you're looking for out of people. It's like, can you give me an example of when you went from limitation, and then how did you adapt, and then how'd you turn it to an advantage, right? Or whatever that adversity story is. Like we all have one. I mean, I was kind of looking at some of your content and so on and so forth, and I saw this talk that you were doing where you were talking about, hey, everybody's got limitations. Some are macro, some are micro, some are big, some are small, some are, like they're formed in different ways. We've talked about this in our early podcast, DJ, when we were kind of introducing ourselves to our audience, the thing I lived with growing up and still do is, I have a skin condition called vitiligo, Aaron, right? So, it's a lack of pigmentation. The melanocytes die. And so then I have all these like white splotches, and I'm a brown guy, I'm black. Right. And so my limitation wasn't physical, right? But it was mental, right? It was like the confidence that I would not or could not carry was real. And that, honestly, that held me back until I was in my mid-20s probably, right? Yeah. It was when I kind of started to turn that into an advantage for myself, right? And like you said, how blindness has kind of in many ways architected who you are from a character perspective, how you've gone about taking big chances and shots, the business you've started. I that resonates with me, right? Because I think similar about my vitiligo. It's kind of really curated who I'd like to be and who I'm trying to be, and how I try to treat people and so on and so forth. But I know that for a long period of time, I had this victim mentality, Yeah. And so I'm curious, when it comes to limitation, adaptation, advantage, like, do you feel like you ever had a victim mentality? And if so, like, when did that shift, and how did that shift?
I think it goes along with that sophomore year of high school as well. I think in that time frame, when I accepted being legally blind, it allowed me to realize, hey, I can choose to either allow it to control my life, or I can control it, because I don't think our challenges define us. We can define them. They're always a part of us, but we can define who we want to be. And it wasn't just about being successful in football. It was being successful in life. How can I become more confident? How can I be better in school? How can I be better athletically? All of that. And just saying, I can either choose to be successful or I won't be. And of course, everyone, no one's perfect, whether it's me, whether it's you, everyone, there are times in your life, even today, that you will ask yourself, why is this happening to me? If you tell me that you don't, then I'm going to tell you that you're lying. It's not true. I don't care who you are. And I will call you out on that. However, it's, do you stay in that mode for 2 minutes or 2 weeks? And it's the people who can stay in that for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and realize I need to change and shift, and can shift their mentality and perspective quickly, that can get over it. We all have that. If I lose a deal, I might be pissed off for 2 minutes. I might say, why me? Why is this happening? But you got to move past it. Allow yourself that 2 minutes, that 5 minutes, that grace period, and then get on with it. Don't let it ruin your day, instead of letting it take over your day.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's, we have this concept that we trademark, neutral thinking, Aaron. And essentially what it says is like, do you accept the truth for what it is without judgment, without narrative, without emotion? And then what actions and behaviors do you get behind that help you, get to your goals, that drive your performance? But that first part of it, like accepting, the reality for what it is the part that's really difficult for a lot of folks. Do you blame? Are you the victim, or do you just accept kind of, here's what the situation is? And so that's, it sounds like that sophomore year was extremely pivotal for you. Is there somebody now presently that you really admire that helps you kind of stay the course and has helped you grow over the last, handful of years?
Great question. There's been many people in my life, coaches in football, consultants in work, that I've obviously paid to help with certain things throughout the years that have been that person. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily one constant individual. I'd say I'm always learning, and if I need to learn something, I'll hire someone to teach me what that is or to support me in that way. I don't think there's necessarily one person, for better or for worse. And I think it's when there's an issue or when I need to grow in some way, identifying that. I'm a believer that coaching, consultants, all of that are good things, but coaching for the sake of coaching isn't. I think, and here's what I mean by that. I think a lot of people hire someone as a coach or a consultant, but then they use it sometimes long-term as a crutch to support them in continuous ways. I'm a believer, whether I'm hiring someone or someone's hiring me, it's like, what is the time period we can get this done? Is this a month? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Great. Let's figure that out. And then I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to grow. And if I need you again, I'm going to pay you again. But you don't need that person to help you for 3 years, for 5 years, most of the time. It's how can you extract what you need in the shortest time possible, continue to grow and learn, and then if you need it again, if you need help again, continue with it. Obviously, there's circumstances, but for the most part, I kind of look at it that way.
I do think it's like, that resonates with me too. I mean, I think that, you go through these seasons of life, right? And whether it be you're working on a business, whether it be you're working on yourself, like, training for something, whether it be a sport, you're evolving regardless, whether it's by design or not. And hopefully it's by design, but either way you're evolving. So sometimes you might outgrow a coach that you kind of came into to kind of work with and have a thesis around what you want to like learn or develop. And then that shifts, like the needs shift, and maybe that individual isn't really fit for helping you with that next season. Right. So I think having that kind of bullpen of coaches or that kind of growing Rolodex of individuals that can provide insights and help and kind of walk the yellow brick road with you is really good. You know what I mean? Because, new perspective is important. I think being on a constant quest for knowledge is like super, super critical,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's figuring out what you need when you need it. So for example, outside of kind of like football and all of that, but I have a good friend of mine who's, a very, good and successful, trainer and strength coach. And obviously I love that stuff. I've always loved lifting weights, and that's a huge part of my life from football. But back in like December, I think it was, I got a pretty bad like herniated disc injury, from lifting. I don't even know, honestly. I don't even remember how I did it, but I hurt myself.
Harry can relate to that. Yeah.
Exactly.
I got to the point where like I couldn't really lift. It hurt me to like sit or stand. I was just miserable. And I lost a decent amount of weight because if you're not exercising and lifting as much, you're not eating as much. And so at one point in like March, I was down to like 193, but that's, body weight. And then, I was getting
193. Hold on a second, man. What's wrong with 193?
You're 145 soaking wet.
Nothing's wrong with it. Nothing's wrong with it. But
that's my exact weight, 193 too, by the way, Aaron. Aaron just
nothing's wrong with it.
No, nothing's wrong with it. Yeah, okay. So I dwindled down to nothing.
For me, I felt like I was too skinny. I wasn't athletic. And so like I don't like consistently pay my friend because I know what I'm doing. But, I sat down with him and I had a conversation. We mapped out, what I was going to do. And I, paid him. He helped me. And now that was in March. Now I weigh 210 again because, I was like, all right, I need to change because this happened. I can't control that I had that. And it's not like I wasn't trying to work out. It's like, okay, I couldn't, and I was causing me not to eat as much. And now that I can again, it's like, okay, now let's build this back. And, I wanted support for, that first couple weeks to help figure that out and put back on that size.
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, when did you finish at Tulane? What year?
2018, May of 2018, okay. I graduated.
So what was your plan? Like, as the season was ending, what was your plan? Did you end up trying to get an opportunity in NFL?
Yeah. So I did my pro day. I part of my spring semester, I flew out to San Diego. I was training with John Carney, legendary NFL kicker, and got ready for my pro day. Did that, talked to a couple teams. And it was fun. It was cool. I knew it was a very long shot because in college, like I did like field goals, extra points in games. I never did punts because we ran a spread style and I couldn't run downfield, obviously. Yeah. In practices, my coaches would be like, don't run downfield. Of course I'd run downfield. I wanted to have fun and knew my teammates weren't going to kill me. Yeah. But in the NFL, you got one long snapper per team. Like I knew it was going to be extremely unlikely to make an NFL roster, but I gave it a shot. After that, I went into the world of finance, which, I learned a ton, but that was the very early days of like, how do I build a business? I was trying to do this on the side. And then obviously every year it started to grow. And then I left finance. It became my full-time thing. But that was kind of my trajectory.
That's great. Yeah. So tell us about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I do keynote speaking, workshops and trainings, consulting, coaching with, companies, sports teams, conferences, schools all over. And so sometimes it's as simple as going and doing a speech for an annual event, a sales kickoff, that type of stuff. Other times it's, an executive leadership, retreat or something where I'm working with them for 3 to 6 hours, at a time through activities and training type stuff. And other times those companies will hire me to work with them on ongoing type basis to, do consulting on, building resilience, leadership, that type of stuff.
That's great. What does resilience mean to you?
Good question. It means resilience boils down to doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. It means understanding that sometimes you need to put emotions aside and push yourself through it. It doesn't mean that you need to be perfect, but it means you need to find ways to get through it. Building resilience is learning that if you don't want to go to the gym, the best thing to do is go to the gym even for 10 minutes and getting your body moving and getting a workout. Resilience is understanding that procrastination is hurting you. It's not helping you. Resilience is realizing that your goal is on the other side of the conversation you don't want to have and the action you don't want to take. And instead of putting it off, ripping off that Band-Aid gets you through it. And it's so much easier than what it was building up in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's hard. It's boring. There's discipline. As a result of it, you got to be able to bounce back. A lot of the things that you just mentioned. So yeah, obviously you've showed a ton of resilience in your life and career, and I admire that for sure.
I think a lot of people, use some of these words interchangeably, and Aaron, you probably experienced this given what you do for a living and how you're working with organizations in particular. They use the big buzzword resilience, or they'll use the word grit, right? And both of which are, wonderful things to develop, right? A muscle that we can build and also will atrophy if we don't train it, right? Like, do you see a difference between resilience and grit? Do you feel like it's the same thing? What are those differences if there are differences?
It's a good question. I've never really thought about it too much. I kind of interchange, resilience, grit, perseverance, overcoming adversity. They're all very similar. They're all just different buzzwords, and it boils down to the same stuff. Sure, there could be minute differences, but it's all so similar.
Yeah. I mean, I think that and DJ, I'd love your take on this. I mean, when I think resilience, I think a little bit of, bounce back ability, that perseverance, that adaptability, that ability to kind of, that nimble agility required when adversity hits, right? Yeah. Kind of being able to take punches, that type of analogy. And then I see grit as, that, like the continual ability to put another foot in front of the other, kind of regardless, right? And it's not necessarily about responding to things that happen bad. It's just about hey, that's that discipline component, right? That wild maniacal discipline to just do have a standard behaviors and lock in on those and have live life by design with habits. That's if I had to separate the two.
Mine's very similar. I think resilience, something doesn't go your way, something bad happens, whatever it is. How do you bounce back? How do you, how do you recover from it? And then the grit is like the grind. And like you said, the next right step. What do I do next? Even if it's a small step, how do I take that tiny step towards my goal and have the determination, self-discipline, consistency to be able to do it? And they go hand in hand. I think a lot of times though, Harry, language, and this, obviously this is what we teach. Words are powerful. Language is powerful. Giving your team a common language, defining that is really important because you're going to go through some stuff. And the things that I've seen great teams do, and I'd love to get your take on this, Aaron, is that, great teams realize that and then they lean in more to the journey than they do the result. And because if I can lock arms with Harry and say, all right, I know we're going to go through some crap. I know it's going to be tough. It's not always going to be fun, but there's a lot of that we're going to learn through the journey. There's going to be a lot of awesome moments in the journey. And when we look back, because we're going to get to the goal, we don't want to look back and say, man, we raced to this spot. And now there's going to be another goal. There's going to be another journey. And we just wasted a bunch of time not really embracing it. So I'd love to get your thoughts around that, Aaron, when you think about, the journey, grit, language.
I think the language matters. You're absolutely right. And I think it's keeping it consistent throughout and being on that same page with your team. So, look, there's no right or wrong. You guys could be right about the difference between grit and resilience. I could be right about them being very similar. There's no right and wrong. There's no argument on that. It's more what do you see for your team? What is resonating with your team and the people that you support, that's your culture and environment, and picking that one thing to be congruent across the board. And it's not about switching things up every day or every week, but picking the things that stick with you are really important.
Yeah, that's right. Is there something that when you're working with an individual or a team, if you unlock this one thing, their team is going to explode, the results are going to come? Is there anything that stands out to you that you do in your coaching?
I think everyone's different. I think it's understanding how to read people as fast as you can. I think that people respond differently to different types of help and different coaching. Some people need more support and help. Other people need to be pushed. And you can figure out fast, as soon as possible, who responds to what. That's how you can help them. And I'll give you an example. When I was at Tulane, my strength coaches, some people, need to really be encouraged. My strength coaches, it's pretty funny. My strength coaches found out that I respond really well to, we're going to lift heavy. They'll come up and they will just scream most obscene things in my face. And is that healthy? Probably not. Did it help me? Did it work? 100%. But if you can find what someone responds to, and I'm not telling teams to go out and freaking yell at your employees. That's not what I'm saying to do. What I'm saying is figuring out how people respond is the number one thing that allows you to help them, because some people need more support. Some people need less support. Some people need you to talk to them in a certain way. Others don't. And when you can figure that out, that's when you can help them.
That's such a great answer. Yeah, because I think everybody's looking for a 1, 2, 3 step, of what to do, but you really have to find out what, drives whoever you're leading. Yep. Get behind that, and then that's how they run through a wall for you. Harry, what do you think, man? What do you think? Is there anything that stands out as you're coaching and leading? Would you agree? Is there something else that you'd add?
I mean, I co-sign on all of the stuff that was just said. I think the one thing that popped in my head is not so much what we're able to coach individuals or teams to do. It's what we can convince them not to do, right? Training them on some of the elimination of the stuff that the human condition typically is attracted to, how to identify that and remove that from their life, remove that from their habits, right? So a lot of it is, instead of doing all the new things or the next new fad, or waking up at 4 a.m. to work out and doing all the stuff before anybody wakes up, and all that stuff's great. It's really hey, what am I willing not to do? Am I willing not to, can I reduce my social media time by 2 hours a day? Can I stop doom scrolling? Can I stop, having my news source of choice in the background while I work, or in the lobby, or whatever, right? Whatever that is, can I stop venting with my buddy every day about stuff that doesn't matter? And it's really hard, right? Because we're
Yeah.
surrounded by negativity. Like the system is built around negativity, right? And so I would say that's one thing. When we can unlock teams and individuals, and starts with individuals really, and then collectively as teams, when we can get them to realize how powerful negativity is, and that about 80% of our subconscious thoughts are negative, right? And 95% of those are repetitive. We can help people understand that. We don't have to pitch them. We don't have to do this great pitch on positivity. It's really about how do we get you to minimize, if not eliminate, but hopefully minimize negativity. Those are the people, those are the teams and people and organizations that are being unlocked, right?
To jump in there, like one thing to say there is you're 100% right. And sometimes it's unfortunate, but sometimes it means you need to get rid of those negative individuals from your team. One of the things that, my coach, my coach got fired after my sophomore season. A new coach came in, Coach Willie Fritz, big, great coach, friend and mentor of mine today. Mm-hmm. He kind of, when he came in, took the principles from, John Gordon of energy vampires. And, look, does it suck to have to cut guys? 100%. Is it sometimes needed? Yes.
Yeah. Addition by subtraction. I think there's a lot of that. You look back in your life, if you've stopped doing, this is a great point, Harry, just to eliminate whether it's negativity, something that's just not serving you well, stop doing that. That's so much easier than trying to start 8 new things. Even some of the things you were saying, Harry, doom scrolling, late night eating, whatever it is, you stop doing all that. Guess what? You're probably more likely to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? Because you weren't up all, so some of these things are going to just work inherently and help you. And I think too, there is something to accept. You kind of mentioned this, Aaron, before, just accepting where you're at and then doing the things that are needed during that time of your life. Right. Harry and I both have some recent life changes. I just sent my daughter off a couple of days ago to Ohio State University. Oldest daughter. She's a freshman. IO. All my Michigan fans. I grew up in Toledo, man. They're all Michigan fans. They're not going to like that they heard that on the podcast.
Yeah, you did it.
I did it. I did do it.
You said it, man.
That's right, man. Harry just, his oldest just started high school. And it's like, the way I'm operating now, in this season of my life, the things that are important, and the way I have to motivate myself, discipline myself, I have to accept it's different than it was when they were in diapers or before they were here. And I think it's okay, like to do that. It may not be your time or season of life to be up at 4:30, working out, or whatever it is. This may be the season of life for you to walk your kid to the bus. You won't look back on that and be sad about it. And so accept that and then do the things that you have to do to be really awesome at your job, as a parent, whatever it is that you're trying to be excellent at.
Well, I think, DJ, I mean, you as you're talking about accepting where you're at, I think that if I had to say one of the things that I think people could do and implement that kind of strike a match for them is something we talked about earlier, which is gratitude, right? I mean, Aaron, for our team, we have we got a gratitude channel, like in our Slack, right? And every day-ish, people, just kind of submit the things they're grateful for. It might be a person, it might be a thing, it might be an experience, it might be, whatever. And sometimes you have to really reach, right? Because you might be in a zone where you're like, God, I've done this for the last 14 days. Like, what am I grateful for? And so you're reaching for stuff, and you might just pick something that's very simple. You know what I mean? Hey, man, I'm just grateful it's not raining outside, or whatever it is, right? Sometimes I say things that I'm grateful for that are annoying me, just to kind of combat how I feel about said thing, right? But I think what's good is, some of the things that hold us back, some of the limitations is how we look, how our perspective on joy, like we're always kind of seeking, we're always kind of reaching for the next thing. With nothing's good enough, we're unsatisfied, we're unfulfilled as human beings often, and so you get stuck in this rut where you can't take action, right? Because you're so busy trying to survive that you're not willing to thrive, right? And so I think, from an individual perspective, if those that are listening, I mean, I really challenge you guys to think about gratitude and writing those things down, sharing them with a team member or accountability partner, a spouse, a partner, but then and then just kind of taking stock of that regularly, because I think that really unlocks people's ability to act,
No question. Here, you said, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
you said two really great words. You talked about joy, you talked about gratitude, and the other thing is, I think you might have mentioned it, happiness. I think we look about like people are constantly trying to find happiness and joy. I think happiness is very like it's very short term. Joy is kind of more long standing. I think gratitude sets the foundation for both of them. And so I think when you start the day out, and you're right, like you're so blessed, so fortunate. Sometimes it's hard. You're scraping, to say, okay, what is it actually? But there's so much to be grateful for. When you start out with a heart like that and a foundation like that, it's much easier to be happy throughout the day and have a joyful life. And so I too would challenge anybody that's not doing that. It's a life hack. So good stuff.
For sure. Hey, Aaron, as we wrap, one of the things I was going to ask you about that I've noticed a lot, I have siblings that play sports and I get to live vicariously through both of them. And, my youngest sibling is Anna, and she played basketball at Stanford. And I just noticed, when she was finished, much like a lot of former college athletes, all three of us are, which all three of us are, there's this big, I think, epidemic right now with athletes when they finish playing and the sport being tied up into their identity. Right. And I wonder for you, Aaron, even more so, does that apply to you or did it apply to you? Because from a perception perspective or from an outsider's perspective, I can imagine you being described as the blind long snapper, right? The first blind, legally blind, an NCAA football player. And I bet you, getting a sense for you right now, I bet you actually took some pride in that, right? Even though you didn't want it to be like in the headlines per se, there's some pride in being the guy who's done something nobody else has done before. And so when that ends, and now you're just like one of us, a regular guy in finance, and now a guy that started his own business. Did you feel that when you were done in 2018, where you're like, hey, who am I going to be now? What am I going to do next? Like, did that ever become an issue for you?
I think the beginning, yeah. I think the first year out of college was challenging for me for a number of reasons. And I think one of those, that influenced a lot of it was wanting to keep playing football and wanting to keep going there and having a tough time with that. I think over time I learned that you have to accept, where you are in life. And as you do other things will become cool and you'll enjoy it and will become part of your identity, not necessarily all of it, but part of it. And, that fades over time. Now I get that same feeling of playing a game from, being on a stage in front of 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people. And it's insane. And I love it. But the first year after college, absolutely.
That's great. It's actually, I didn't realize that you said 2018 was when you stopped. You've done amazing work, man, over the last 8 years. That's an incredible trajectory to be able to go into the business world and then get up in front of thousands of people and impact them in the way that you're doing. I would highly encourage you to continue down that path, man. We need more of you, that story around resilience, your story around just how to pick yourself up and take the next right step is one that I think will resonate with a lot of people. There's no shortage of challenge or change, adversity, pressure for people, and you have truly been able to help unlock that for folks, and that's awesome, man. Keep encouraging you to do it.
It's dope, dude. That's great. So Aaron, where can people find you? Are you on socials or your website? What's the deal?
Yeah, my website's aarongolub.com. Search my name on any social media platform, you'll find me as well. But more than happy to connect, reach out, happy to help in any way.
Yeah, Aaron, are you writing at all? Have you authored anything yet?
I do not currently. It's an interesting story. About a year and a half ago, I actually got approached by a publisher, and part of me is an idiot for saying no, but it's fine. I got approached out of the blue from a decently sized publisher. Basically sight unseen, being like, we want, we're going to pay you to write a book. It wasn't an insane amount of money. It was,
sure.
Anyways, at the time I was, starting, a different aspect of my business and some things. And I was like, look, like this isn't something I, want to take on right now. And I just knew that I would kind of half-ass it if I did. And I wanted it to be good. And so that is actually something right now that I've been diving into, and we'll probably be reaching back out to them in the coming weeks, truthfully. Yeah. And I have more of like an actual outline and stuff now. So chances are in the next year-ish, I'll have one out.
So next time he comes on the podcast, Harry, he's going to be an author, man. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. It's funny because when our late co-founder, Trevor Moad, when I first met him, it was 2017. He too was, I'm not going to write a book, or he was kind of waffling on whether he wanted to write one or not. He ended up writing 2. And those 2 books have legitimately changed people's lives, So I would tell you, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for those future folks that you're going to really impact and be able to help do great things. Trevor's still, even though he's not with us, he's still having a significant influence on folks.
Yeah, I think you got a unique story that should be shared, brother.
No doubt.
Well, listen, we're grateful for you to take some time with us. We'll hopefully have you on again, and we can just keep keep going down some of these different paths, man. But like, excited to see what you continue to do in the future, and for those listening, remember, you don't have to be sick to get better.